Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us on the news at 7 on 90 International. We're live in Abuja. I'm Ruth Aguwele. Let's start with the headlines. Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs commences screening of career ambassadorial nominees. Attorney General of the Federation, chief law officers in the Federation, and heads of courts gear up towards improving Nigeria's justice system. An Abuja-Kaduna train service gets a boost with new coaches and locomotives. We'll begin with global update on COVID-19. New Zealand on verge of eradicating coronavirus as International Council of Nurses announces the death of more than 600 of its members from coronavirus worldwide. Let's now join Adebola Brookslyn Sunday for more.
Data from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control shows that the center has tested 71,336 COVID-19 samples. Currently, the country has 11,166 confirmed cases of the virus, 315 deaths, while 3,329 persons have recovered and have been discharged. Lagos State leads those at the top of the table, while Kogi remains at the bottom. The Africa Center for Disease Control says the continent now has 163,599 persons infected with coronavirus, 4,611 fatalities, and 70,894 recoveries. On the COVID-19 dashboard of the Coronavirus Resource Center of Johns Hopkins University at about 7 p.m. Nigerian time, 388,763 persons have died from complications related to coronavirus globally, while 3,195,994 people have recovered from the virus. This is from a total of 6,615,318 persons who have been infected worldwide. Meanwhile, the International Council of Nurses says the death toll among nurses from COVID-19 in a survey carried out in 30 countries has surpassed 600, while an estimate of 450,000 healthcare workers have been infected globally, as the Council calls on governments to employ better measures needed in protecting healthcare workers from coronavirus. A New Zealand authority says the country is on the verge of eradicating coronavirus from its shores. It added that only a single person in the nation of about 5 million people is known to still have the virus, and the person is not hospitalized. I'm Adebola Brookslyn Sunday. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Adebola. The chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustapha, says the task force will continue to monitor the ease of lockdown nationwide and will not hesitate to review any guideline when necessary. The chairman informed that the task force has continued to receive support from development partners and agencies in the areas of health kits in the fight against COVID-19.
The Presidential Task Force will continue to monitor the overall compliance of the easing of restrictions as well as evolution of any outbreak. However, we will not hesitate to review as we progress should the situation warrant to avoid preventable risk of transmission.
The NCDC molecular laboratories are still the WHO recognized platforms for testing of coronavirus, as rapid diagnostic test kits give false and misleading results, and there's no treatment for coronavirus so far that has proven impact on morbidity.
Evaluated. But what it means is that results obtained from these test kits, they're not tenable for diagnostics, and they are deficient in sensitivity and specificity and are likely to give false results and mislead people.
The trials for chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine will go on, and we have no problem with that. But we are asking that we restrict the use of these medicines to those trial settings.
Let's look at other issues. Secretary General of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, is categorically that the rebalancing process of the global oil industry may be longer than anticipated under the prevailing uncertainties, downside risk, and given that global inventories appear to be continuing to build, although at a much lower rate than the record pace of late March and April. The OPEC boss at the 133rd meeting of the Economic Commission Board held virtually, however, expressed optimism that the actions taken by OPEC Plus in April stopped short the race to $0 oil. In his words, Barkindo said, and I quote, "The decision taken by our members and our partners in the Declaration of Cooperation has been pivotal in reducing volatility and bringing back some semblance of stability to the market," end of quote. No individual stakeholder, Dr. Barkindo added, can have all the answers. It is only by reaching out and deepening the dialogue between reputable institutions that they can provide a better and broader sense of the rapidly evolving energy landscape. The OPEC, he stressed, will continue to work closely with the International Energy Agency, including regular consultations and International Energy Forum, to ensure open lines of communication between producers and consumers. The Ministerial Coordinating Committee on Health, comprising of all 15 ECOWAS Ministers of Health, held its first meeting. The video conference was chaired by Dr. Osage Ehanire, Minister of Health of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, with Professor Stanley Okolo, Director General of West Africa Health Organization, as co-chair.
The ministers were concerned that the pandemic continues to spread in the ECOWAS region, although the member states are at different stages of evolution. They noted that 14 weeks into the pandemic in the region, 35,115 people had been confirmed COVID-19 positive, of whom 56% still had active infection. 42% had recovered and 2% had unfortunately lost their lives as at 1st June 2020. They observed that despite the improved surveillance and increase in testing, only about 0.11% of the population had been tested to date. The ministers agreed to institute measures to mitigate the socio-economic impact of the pandemic on the population, mobilize more resources to support national and regional COVID-19 response capacity, strengthen capacity for contact tracing, isolation and treatment, expand health force through the use of community health workers, allied health professionals and healthcare students to assist in the public health response, such as contact tracing, and mitigate current shortage, decentralized testing, surveillance and case management to the district, with professionals and volunteers deployed to support local efforts, among others. The ministers tasked West African Health Organization to work with the Department for Trade, Customs and Free Movement at ECOWAS Commission and the Ministerial Coordination Committee on Transport to develop guidelines and standing operating procedures on regional cross-border movement, whether by air, land or sea, for consideration by the ministers. These should cover the following areas: essential products including medicines, agricultural, food products and petroleum, commercial goods for trade and business, and passengers movements, motor parks and loading areas for passengers and goods, border posts or entry points for international travel, including air, land and seaports, risk communication for travelers and handlers of goods. The ministers commended the ECOWAS Commission and WHO for the technical and financial support to member states in coordination, financial support, training of personnel, and provision of diagnostic test kits and critical medical supplies, including personal protective equipment, PPEs. Obiageli Ugoke, NTA News.
Right, let's look at the legislature. The Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs has commenced the screening of 42 career ambassadorial nominees with a call to ensure enhancement of Nigeria's foreign policy objectives. National Assembly correspondent Abdullahi Aminu reports.
The list of the career ambassadorial nominees was contained in an executive communication to the Senate by President Muhammadu Buhari on May 6, 2020. The screening exercise by the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs could have been completed within the 2 weeks deadline given to it. But for the lockdown in the Federal Capital Territory and closure of the National Assembly, that was not achieved.
Look at what the African Union is going to do, and also what ECOWAS is going to do.
Is to leverage on our natural endowments and block necessary leakages.
We have to go around all challenges and make sure we fulfill this legislative action.
In another development, the Senate Committee on Capital Market has successfully screened the nominees for the Director General and the Board of the Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission.
With the training that I have, I am able to really look at a financial instrument and really understand its risk return.
With funds like this, we can fix all these out.
On behalf of the NITA DG, management and staff, I say thanks for being with us on this ride. For details, please check us out at www.nita.gov.ng. Until then, I am Ewomazino Wonder. Thanks for watching. Stay tech savvy and stay safe.
COVID-19 transmission is mostly through droplets from sneezing and saliva. The most effective way to protect yourself from the virus is to practice good personal hygiene. Wash hands with soap under running water or use an alcohol-based sanitizer if water is not available. Maintain at least 2 meters distance between yourself and anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Cover your mouth and nose with your elbow or tissue when you cough or sneeze. Dispose of the used tissue immediately. If you have traveled recently to a country with COVID-19 outbreak in the last 14 days and you have a fever, cough, or breathing difficulty, call NCDC toll-free numbers before going to the hospital. This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
Even house cleaner go back our house, go spread the same infection. Now so this coronavirus begin take style dey spread from family to we country people.
So therefore, make we join hands obey all the instructions wey government and our medical people don give us. Wash your hands with water and soap regularly. Or use hand sanitizer. No go join body for where people gather plenty. Maintain social distancing. Above all, stay una house as government don advise. Stop unnecessary waka about. So make we not spread this virus.
Coronavirus. No be only big man like me dey catch o. If it catch anybody, even poor man himself fit get am. So make we join hand together. Take stop with this deadly disease where they kill our people and they never get a cure.
Together
Together, we go overcome if we do all the things wey dem tell us to do.
Vice President restates the commitment of the federal government towards the nation's economic stability.
I am able to really look at a financial instrument and really understand its risk return.
Sacking of NDDC staff attracts legislators' attention as ambassadors and secretaries of boards appear before the Senate.
Everybody is taking responsibility of driving the process because we are dealing with infection and transmission in the communities.
And the latest on COVID-19. Good evening. Thanks for joining us on Network News on the NTA. I'm Cyril Stober in Abuja. Also on the news tonight is Dr. Oguyemi in Lagos and Mohammed Ibrahim in Maiduguri. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo led members of the Economic Sustainability Committee in an interaction this Thursday with the leadership of the National Assembly on the draft sustainability plan ahead of the submissions of the plan to the President. State House correspondent Jide Onifade reports.
The virtual meeting, unquote, from the presidential villa was attended by the Senate President, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and several other principal officers of the National Assembly. As Vice President Yemi Osinbajo explained, the Economic Sustainability Committee called the meeting to consult with the National Assembly before the committee's report is submitted to Mr. President. Present members of the National Assembly, the Vice President noted that the President had always commended the good working relationship between the executive arm of the federal government and the current National Assembly. He added that it is very clear that COVID-19 has presented the country with an enormous economic challenge and also an opportunity. Both the Senate President and the Speaker welcomed the plan and commended the President and the Vice President for calling the meeting to enable the legislative arm of government to review the plan and make comments. In the State House, Jide Onifade, NTA News.
The federal government is set to commence the implementation of the Mechanized Agriculture Revolution program in the country, tagged the Green Imperative. Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed said it's part of the present administration's deliberate policy of ensuring that the sector is made viable. The minister stated this at a media briefing in Abuja. Anthony Folkson reports.
The Information and Culture Minister, Lai Mohammed, explained that the Green Imperative Program is a Nigeria-Brazilian bilateral agriculture development program. The scheme is an outcome of Nigeria's decision to enroll in a government-to-government More Food International program. The $1.2 billion program will be funded by the Brazilian Development Bank.
The program will import completely knockdown parts of about 5,000 tractors and numerous farming implements.
Similarly, 662 local governments have been programmed for the mechanized service scheme to be operated by the private sector. Lai Mohammed added that the scheme will create about 5 million jobs as well as create a sustainable supply chain of agricultural raw materials for large manufacturing companies.
This will create 774 service centers nationwide to mechanize our farming methods and process or add value to farm produce locally, leading to efficiency and eliminating post-harvest losses, thereby cutting down cost of food all year round.
On his part, the Minister for Agriculture, Sabo Nanonu, chronicled the gains derivable from the mechanized agri-revolution.
This mechanization is going to affect 632 local governments across the country. And there will be accompanied to that 140 processing centers. These processing centers will be designed in such a way that clusters of local governments, maybe in 5 or in 6 or in 7, that are producing common products, will have a processing center for that common product to process for local consumption and to process for export.
With all plans and negotiations completed, the scheme, the Agri Minister assured, will take off soon. In Abuja, Anthony Forson, NTA News.
And from the legislature now, the Senate Committee on Niger Delta Affairs has commenced investigation into the alleged sacking of 20 management staff of the Niger Delta Development Commission. National Assembly correspondent Ignatius Nkwo reports on this and other committee activities at the Senate.
The 12th of May 2020, the Senate mandated its Committee on Niger Delta Development Commission to investigate the alleged sacking of 20 management staff of the Commission. 23 days after the investigation is on, the Federal Civil Service Commission and the legal team of the sacked staff were summoned for submissions.
There has been no reason whatsoever other than that the forensic auditing, which is on the ground, which has been set down, they are found as persons who are likely to interfere.
The committee demanded to find out from the Federal Civil Service Commission if an external forensic auditor has the right to suspend a staff.
The first question, because we have press, does an external auditor or a forensic auditor have the right to direct that 1, 2, 3, 4 staff be sent on compulsory leave?
The foreign service would have seen nothing like that.
I wanted to also hear that, well, on account of alleged gross misconducts, bordering on mismanagement of funds and what have you of the Commission, the officers concerned were queried.
We cannot overrule. We have no business with them. Whatever they do, it is up to their governing board.
The Federal Civil Service Commission, however, explained that parastatals have their own rules different from that of the Federal Civil Service Commission. The committee will be expecting the Niger Delta Development Commission in the next meeting. Meanwhile, the Senate Committee on National Planning and Economic Affairs has screened 7 nominees as members of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission.
And I want to assure you that there's a lot that we are bringing to the table.
So they should expect disciplined organization.
The report of the committee will now be presented at plenary for confirmation. From the National Assembly, Ignatius Nkwo, NTA News.
The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, says the ministry is fashioning a framework for the effective coordination of agencies under it. She was speaking at an interactive session with the Senate Committee on Special Duties. Here again is Ignatius Nkwo with that report.
The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, and agencies under her ministry appeared before the Senate Committee on Special Duties to brief it on the 2019 budget performance. The minister stressed on the significance of having a conducive office as she informed the committee of plans to improve on the ministry's operations.
We are currently
currently working on that. Somebody has come to really support us to establish that dashboard where we know where our interventions are, what we need to do next, where our attention is needed most.
The Managing Director of the Northeast Development Commission, Mohammed Al-Khali, spoke on some ongoing projects of the Commission, which he said have been delayed by COVID-19 pandemic.
We decided to have a project pattern of doing at least 2 projects in each local government of the Northeast. We have 112 local governments, so we decided to look for a start. Let's see some critical areas in education, health, supply water, etc., and do 2 projects.
So, Honorable Minister, will urge you to intervene. They have started well, and they need to finish well.
Meanwhile, members of the Senate Committee on Power met and resolved to investigate all federal government interventions in the power sector and the impact of COVID-19 on the power sector recovery plan.
To identify why these interventions have come and there has been no improvement, so that at the end of the day, the leadership of the Senate will present that to the President of this country, who has shown a lot of commitment in providing electricity to Nigerians.
The investigation will also cut across market participants in the power value chain. From the National Assembly, Ignatius Nkwo, NTN News.
And still staying with the legislature, the famine season is here, and farmers across the country are challenged by the threats of insecurity. It's against this backdrop that members of the House of Representatives are urging security agencies to scale up response to incidences of banditry, killings and kidnappings to prevent food insecurity. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali reports.
The motion coming under matters of urgent public importance was raised by Representative Sada Sodi Jibia, and it generated comments during plenary.
The country is battling to contain the dangerous community infections rate of COVID-19, added with the persistent attacks by criminals on farming communities across the country.
Food security is something that all of us should be worried about. Apart from the human life that we should also to protect. All of us here have sworn to do that. And I think we should call a spade a spade.
How can we be preferring sharing money for whatever palliative or tragedy comes instead of getting our people back to their houses? Mr. Speaker, we're under threat.
The lawmakers demanded new approach to fighting insecurity to enable farmers access farmlands for cultivation.
No one that is not being affected by the situation that we find ourselves in Nigeria.
It's not about only calling the security to come and brief us. No, they have to tell us the truth of the matter.
Another motion that elicited comments from House members is the rising cases of rape and other forms of violence against women in Nigeria, brought by Representative Rotimi Agunsoyi, who cited recent rape cases of Uwa Omozuwa, China Ezekwe, and a minor in Jigawa State.
An alarming 28% of Nigerian women aged between 25 to 29 years have experienced some form of physical violence against them. People talk to girls, protect yourselves, stay in your lane, but nobody talks to the boy child. Nobody tells the boy child, you need to respect the woman.
Consent or no consent, you cannot have carnal knowledge or sexual intercourse with somebody who is underage, whether even without consent.
The lawmakers urge states to domesticate Child Rights Act. 4 bills, including the reenacted National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons Act, were passed. From the National Assembly, Lami Ali, NTA News.
And turning to aviation now, the Director General, Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, Captain Musa Nuhu, has listed 5 airports that will be allowed to commence domestic operations on June 21. A communication by the NCAA to flight operators states that Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos, Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, the Omagwa International Airport, Port Harcourt, Malam Aminu Kano International Airport, Kano, as well as the Sam Mbakwe Airport, Owerri, now have approval to commence operations. According to the letter, Other airports will be added gradually after a review and assessment. All flights to any of the airports outside the 5 approved shall comply with the existing COVID-19 protocols for approvals. The NCAA boss emphasized that the closure of Nigerian airports to international flights will continue until a date of resumption is announced. Emergency and essential flights are exempted from the restriction and shall comply with the existing COVID-19 protocols for approvals. Reconstruction work at the runway of the Akano Ibiam International Airport in the meantime has commenced weeks after the suspension of work due to the coronavirus pandemic. Jude Abugu has an update on the level of work done so far from Enugu.
The coronavirus pandemic affected the reconstruction work at the runway of the Akano Ibiam International Airport, which was initially slated for reopening in April this year. The outbreak of the virus in the country had forced the construction workers to temporarily suspend work at the airport. This made it impossible for the reopening of the airport in April. However, few days ago, the workers returned to the site with renewed vigor and in high spirits. Construction workers are busy working around the clock to ensure that the federal government's desire to reopen the airport as soon as possible is actualized. The crew also noticed drainage work at the road leading to the airport's local terminal. However, the crew could not access the international terminal building to ascertain the state of work at the building. This was because the Chinese workers handling that section of the project left due to the outbreak of coronavirus in the country and are yet to return. Efforts to find out from the airport's management on when they are likely to return to work was not successful. In Enugu, Jude Abugu, NTA News.
And this just in, a minor fire incident was recorded this Thursday afternoon at a store near the State House Chapel in the Presidential Villa, Abuja. In a statement, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, said the incident, linked to an electrical fault, was immediately brought under control using available fire extinguishers well ahead of the arrival of the Federal Fire Service trucks stationed just outside the premises. There was no casualty as a result of the incident. Let's now take a break to bring you some messages.
I wish to once again commend the frontline workers across the country who, on a daily basis, risk everything to ensure we win this fight. For those who got infected in the line of duty, rest assured that government will do all it takes to support you and your families during this exceedingly difficult period. I will also take this opportunity to assure you all that your safety, well-being, and welfare remains paramount to our government. I am using this opportunity to express our deepest condolences to the families of all Nigerians that have lost their loved ones as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is our collective loss, and we share your grief.
Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white clothes, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it. Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white clothes, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it.
Nigerians, let us take responsibility. Stay healthy, stay safe, and curb the spread of the virus. Take responsibility. The coronavirus spreads from one person to another. Let us avoid crowd gathering of any kind for any reason. Take responsibility. Avoid traveling from one state to another during these lockdown restrictions. Obey all the rules that are put in place. Take responsibility. Stop spreading fake news and unverified reports about the coronavirus. There is no known cure for COVID-19. Take responsibility. Observe all the measures that can help stop the spread of the virus. Together, we can do this, but only if we take responsibility. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Alpha, say tomorrow still day on.
What's your tomorrow?
Community meeting now.
You know they here, Abi?
Now beggy. See, if we meet for my house, inside parlor, then go no.
This COVID-19 is not a child's play.
If you want to elect a new secretary, we fit
do one for WhatsApp or for Skype or even on Zoom. Or we just wait.
I will not negotiate
this social distancing. It is non-negotiable.
Not every infected person shows symptoms, but every infected person is contagious. Avoid large gatherings and self-isolate if you think you might have come in contact with a carrier. Your safety and the safety of others is in your hands.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
We have observed the lockdown. We have practiced the measures in order to curb the spread of the virus, but we can do better. The coronavirus spread is increasing daily, and only together can we cut down the numbers and defeat the spread of the virus. Remember, COVID-19 is not a death sentence, and a recovered patient cannot spread the disease. Do not stigmatize. Do not hesitate to report any case, or if you have come in contact with anybody that has been infected with COVID-19. If you have cough and fever, please stay at home and call your state hotline. Find state numbers at www.covid19.ncdc.gov.ng. Remember, it is for your own good and for the good of every Nigerian. Let us do better and defeat the virus. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
New Zealand on verge of eradicating coronavirus as International Council of Nurses announces the death of more than 600 of its members from coronavirus worldwide. Let's join Adibola Brookslyn Sunday for these and more on Global Update.
Data from the Nigerian Center for Disease Control shows that the center has tested 71,336 COVID-19 samples. Currently, the country has 11,166 confirmed cases of the virus, 315 deaths, while 3,329 persons have recovered and have been discharged. Lagos State leads those at the top of the table, while Kogi remains at the bottom. The Africa Center for Disease Control says the continent now has 163,599 persons infected with coronavirus, 4,611 fatalities, and 70,894 recoveries. On the COVID-19 dashboard of the Coronavirus Resource Center of Johns Hopkins University at about 7 p.m. Nigerian time, 388,763 persons have died from complications related to coronavirus globally, while 3,195,994 people have recovered from the virus. This is from a total of 6,615,318 persons who have been infected worldwide. Meanwhile, the International Council of Nurses says the death toll among nurses from COVID-19 in a survey carried out in 30 countries has surpassed 600, while an estimate of 450,000 healthcare workers have been infected globally. as the council calls on governments to employ better measures needed in protecting healthcare workers from coronavirus. A New Zealand authority says the country is on the verge of eradicating coronavirus from its shores. It added that only a single person in the nation of about 5 million people is known to still have the virus, and the person is not hospitalized. I'm Adebola, Brooks Lane Sunday. Thanks for your time.
And back on the domestic scene, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has decried a steady rise in maternal and child mortality in the country, attributing the trend to disruption of essential services in the health sector due to the coronavirus pandemic. Mitaire Ikpen reports on this and other issues that dominated today's PTA briefing.
PF lamented that the fear of COVID-19 among health workers is leading to more avoidable deaths.
We've also seen life-saving maternal, newborn and child health services, routine vaccinations, access to care for chronic conditions such as HIV and other treatments not being delivered in our hospitals. And people need to be able to access care.
New criteria for discharging confirmed cases of COVID-19 were announced.
If you're symptomatic, you can be discharged if you have had 3 days without symptoms, in addition to at least 10 days of symptoms. If you're asymptomatic, we can discharge you. You can be discharged 14 days after your first PCR positive test. So we no longer have to wait for a negative test to discharge. You can be discharged 14 days after your first positive with confidence that you can go home, that you're no longer infective, and you're not at risk you're not putting your family, your friends, or anyone else at risk if you're asymptomatic.
The task force, however, advises against self-medication for COVID-19.
WHO continues to emphasize there is still no evidence that hydroxychloroquine or any other drug is effective in treating or preventing COVID-19.
States and local governments are urged to take ownership of managing the pandemic in their domains.
State oversight of this phase of the response is very critical. The response needs to be decentralized to the local government level, identifying high-burden local governments to rapidly trace, test, and treat cases.
The daily epidemic curve of confirmed cases shows a consistently rising trajectory with corresponding increase in fatalities.
The task force emphasized that it is not a procurement body and does not award contracts, urging the public to beware of fraudsters. In Abuja, Mitaire Ikpen, NTA News.
A meeting of the Attorneys General of the Federation in 36 states, along with heads of courts and that of the FCT, has resolved to create a working platform that will ensure improvement in the nation's justice system. This came from a virtual conference which judiciary correspondent Femi Okewu monitored for NTA News.
For now, reforms have been an integral part of Nigeria's justice system. But more so now, with the coronavirus pandemic changing the mode of various activities. The virtual conference organized by the Federal Ministry of Justice brought together the Attorney General of the Federation, Attorneys General of all the 36 states of the Federation, heads of courts in the country and the FCT, and the Solicitor General of the Federation. Areas of the nation's justice system which the body will tinker with in the light of the influence of COVID-19 include virtual court hearings, decongestion of correctional centers, particularly of awaiting trials, decentralization of correctional services, and implications of various legal and statutory measures on our justice system and their constitutionalism.
As stakeholders, we have a duty to ensure that the pandemic is not allowed to grant the administration of justice machinery to a halt.
If there is effective coordination, we can solve the problem of overcrowding of our prisons with our waiting trial population.
Virtual court hearings are no contradiction to the provision of the Constitution, which says that court hearings are supposed to be in public. If anything, experts say that it enhances that provision. And so, this conference by the Attorney General of the Federation and the Attorneys General of State sets the stage for whatever subsequent changes there are going to be in Nigeria's justice sector. In Abuja, Femi Okeowo, NTA News.
The Minister of State for Education, Emeka Nwajuba, says the ministry's plan to reopen schools in the country depends on the mechanisms put in place by the federal government towards getting the economy of the country moving. This was his response when he was asked about the actual date of resumption of classroom activities before the House Committee on Basic Education and Services. National Assembly correspondent Abdullahi Aminu reports.
The meeting was convened to enable the Federal Ministry of Education explain why the schools are not included in the eased lockdown that allowed worship places to reopen. The factors to consider before fixing date for the resumption, the minister said, include the nature of the spread of the viral disease, capacity of the healthcare system in school areas, and whether some schools will be used as secondary isolation centers.
All of these things that we are discussing, none of them is concluded yet. We think that this period is a period for everybody to make that kind of input. And like I said, starting with you.
I assure you that this committee remains poised to work, continuing to work with the ministry to make our educational sector better.
It was agreed at the meeting that the legislature will serve as the primary constituency of the ministry in the formulation of the recommendations that will guide the schools' reopening processes. From the National Assembly, Abdullahi Aminu, NTA News.
And speaking of partial easing of the lockdowns, Kaduna State Government is concluding plans to relax restrictions in the state after weeks under lockdown to contain the spread of coronavirus. This came to the fore after a meeting between Governor Nasiru Ahmed El-Rufai and traditional rulers in Kaduna. Muhammad Umar Ajengi reports.
More than 8 weeks now, Kaduna has been locked down in compliance with health advisories towards flattening the curve against COVID-19. Now the authorities are planning to reopen, again in line with safety guidelines. This meeting with traditional rulers, presided by Governor Nasiru Ahmed El-Rufai, is to discuss ways to go about it, how to use restrictions, especially in worship places, markets and schools. Top discussions.
We have discussed a lot and we have given advice, but I want to assure you that before we came here, the government has already made a plan. They showed us their plans and we made input. And so we believe that together with the input from religious leaders and from the commercial people, I'm sure that within this week, a lot will be out to make life easier for our people.
This consultation today and other consultations that are ongoing are all aimed at having a workable document that the governor at the appropriate time will announce to the people.
As authorities are sure of relaxing the lockdown, adherence to preventive measures issued by medical experts, they say, is still imperative to prevent transmission of the virus. In Kaduna, I am Muhammad Umar Ajingi, NTA News.
Well, the commencement of the second phase of the ease of lockdown for an initial period of 4 weeks followed new guidelines, with the government lifting the ban on worship activities. In this report, Alika Okpanachi Arua looks at the measures clerics hope to put in place in strict compliance with the President's directive on personal hygiene protocols and physical distancing.
Nigerians rejoice over the ease of lockdown in places of worship by the government. They maintain that this is the time to seek God's intervention in the fight against COVID-19 more than ever before. Some, however, are not open to the idea.
By opening the worship center, within shortest time, COVID-19 will become a thing of past in this country, because we are going to pray to God that He should take it out of this country.
For me, no, I'm not going. I'm not going for now.
Though it is a matter of choice, Imam of Abuja National Mosque, Dr. Mohammed Kabir Adam, says as measures to guide against the spread of COVID-19, members will have to come to the mosque with their personal prayer materials, as they will not be permitted to share or use mosque materials as before.
The mosque, inshallah, always will be clean, just to abide by the rules. So every worshipper coming to the mosque must wear a mask. It's mandatory.
For a start, they said they want us to worship just 1 hour. Whether Christian church or the Muslim mosque, everything should not be more than 1 hour. So when we gather together in the church, during that 1 hour, we may take 5 to 7 minutes, of emphasis on COVID-19.
They appeal to the government to continue to intensify efforts in the fight against COVID-19 so that normal activities can resume fully. In Abuja, Alika Okwanachi, Arua, NT News.
And let's now join Dotun in Lagos for more reports on Network News. Dotun.
Thank you, Cyril. As part of measures to ease the partial lockdown instituted to flatten the COVID-19 curve, Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has directed Muslims and Christians to reopen their worship centers from the 19th and 21st of this month. The governor, who announced the new measure at a media briefing, stated that vigils are prohibited while persons below the age of 15 and senior citizens above 65 would not be allowed into places of worship due to their vulnerability. Nosa Usula reports.
The governor explained that worship centers will be permitted to accommodate only 40% of their capacity and obey all protocols and guidelines released by the Lagos State Safety Commission and Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency.
The banks are now have been allowed to open fully, and their working days will remain Mondays to Friday. We have now granted offices and private businesses, of course excluding the prohibited ones who we will mention. All of our organized private sector and manufacturing concerns will now operate and open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the evening. But our gyms, our nightclubs, spas, cinemas will still remain closed.
The governor, who promised that there would be another review in 2 weeks' time, said for now, educational institutions are to continue with e-learning, while the Ministry of Education would deliberate with stakeholders on guidelines for resumption.
All of these eased restriction and permitted opening must be accompanied by standard prevention and control measure of typical physical distancing, mandatory temperature checks, and use of face masks in public places.
Governor Sanwo-Olu, who directed officers on levels 13 and 14 in the state civil service to resume work from Monday next week, said those on level 1 to 12 are to still remain at home. He appealed to other state governments to check those contravening the ban on interstate movement. In Lagos, Nosa Usula, NTA News.
The federal government is re-strategizing to increase its natural gas reserves, guarantee investment, as well as make the sector more attractive for indigenous and international participation. Imolayo Tokede, who attended the virtual meeting where the nation's regulatory body, the Department of Petroleum Resources, declared the gains of the federal government from the sector, gathers that the nation's natural gas reserves surged by 3.16 trillion cubic feet in January 2020 against the 2.10 trillion cubic feet recorded in 2019.
Nigeria remains the largest oil and gas producer in Africa. Figures by the Department of Petroleum Resources, DPR, shows a decrease in crude oil and condensate reserves of 36.89 billion barrels as at 1st of January 2020, against 37 billion barrels in the previous year. The natural gas reserves, however, increased to 203.16 trillion cubic feet, against 201 trillion cubic feet in 2019.
The target for crude reserve actually is 40 billion barrels, while the gas reserve, we have two targets. One, By 2025, we want to see the gas reserve to grow to about 210 trillion cubic feet, while by 2030, we want our gas reserve to hit 220 trillion cubic feet.
For improved productivity and accountability, more strategies are being implemented in the oil and gas sector.
The routine surveillance report and online display that we do have help us to check per second basis, and the production and export reporting that we generate from this data help us to track the volumes from wellhead to flow station to terminal for export.
The newly launched 2020 Marginal Fuels Bid Round for 57 oil fields is also approved that Nigeria is ready for more business in the oil and gas industry. In Lagos, Imoli Ayotokide, NTA News.
And that does it from here. Another break is on the lineup. Network News continues after.
Properly before the makeup.
We visit Mrs. Johnson live in Lagos.
Helen Paul!
Hello, madam. Would you like to join us on this mission?
Yes, but how?
Just one question for you. How do you keep your toilet clean?
I use regular detergent and bleach for washing and removing yellow stains. I have been using it for years.
Oh, madam. The regular detergents and bleach are used for washing clothes. To clean your toilet properly, you need Harpic 10X. It is specially made for stains in the toilet. Harpic Thick formula settles on stains and gives 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach.
Wow! Now I'm convinced, Helen Paul.
Really?
Yeah.
Now that she's part of the mission, the next house is yours.
A united Nigeria,
strong in the fight
against COVID-19, to bring a voice of hope, to join hands to bring an end to this pandemic.
Kandi diko hafia si akwada agha n'otu aka ahụ ka ndị nwere ikike ịhụ maka ahụike si dịkwa nkwadebe maka ọgụ a.
Ní ayé àtijọ́, a farapamọ́ lábẹ́ àpáta Olúmọ, a sì borí ogun náà. Àkókò tó láti farapamọ́ sínú ilé.
Mu ci gaba da kaɗaita juna, kuma mu kiyaye wuraren da akwai cunkoson mutane.
Mukumulo bipa brinko lokachide.
Womere ya mevogja wokora bowe kokekokyo, wojeseri sanitizer wogora bowe.
Fulbe ballen ko emeden kauten judde kaben dun nyaw coronavirus. Daroden e wuro ballen gomnati ballen ko emeden dun nyaw dun waray dun dillay.
One Nigeria, different languages, and we shall surely prevail.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibilities in partnership with Nigerian Television Authority. You can't beat the rich.
Thanks for staying with us. We're back in Abuja now. 392 bandits have been eliminated by troops in a renewed onslaught against criminals. This was announced at a news conference in Abuja by the coordinator, Defense Media Operations, Major General John Enenche. Defense correspondent Ismail Musa tells us more.
This periodic news conference by the Defense Headquarters provides regular information on ongoing armed forces operations across the country. This session presents an update on Operation Katsina, a subsidiary of Operation Hadarin Daji that began on 14th May 2020 and consumed 392 bandits.
This seriously degraded the bandits and other criminal elements in the two zones. Consequently, those bandits that escaped resorted to reprisal attacks on civilian targets. However, Operation Accord was preemptively planned by the High Command of the Armed Forces of Nigeria to handle this situation.
Operation Accord the coordinator notes, involves the armed forces and other security agencies.
All identified hideouts and hibernations of the enemies will be decisively cleared through land and air combat actions.
The Defense Headquarters appeals for proactive information about suspicious people or movement as operations progress across the country. Ismail Musa, NTA News.
And still on security issues, barely 2 weeks after deploying a batch of Special Forces Regiment to support the Quick Response Wing Lafia, the Nigerian Air Force has deployed another batch to Katsina State to further support the fight against bandits in the northwest region. Correspondent Neja'atu Tijani reports.
Recovering from the throes of a series of coordinated bandit attacks targeting several local government areas, breaching a peace treaty in Katsina State, the deployment of the regiment is a direct response to President Buhari's call for improved action against the attacks.
To Katsina, to Zamfara, and to Sokoto.
The chief of the air staff now has the picture of the situation.
Now to the northwest region. I am pleased with the efforts you have made so far, but I want to urge you to give no breathing space to bandits.
Willing, able and ready, these men of the Special Forces Regiment stand ready to take on bandits in Katsina State, one of the NAF responses to banditry and other acts of terror in northwestern Nigeria under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. The Nigerian Air Force is considering all factors while trying to intercept the bandits. Naja'atu Tijani, NTA News.
And the welfare of officers, soldiers and the barracks community of the Nigerian Army is topmost on the agenda of the Chief of Army Staff. This being the purpose of his visit to the 3 Armored Division Maxwell Kobe Cantonment Jos, where he inspected ongoing and completed projects. Rinred Silvanus Lot has the details.
Projects inspected by the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, include the Multipurpose Cooperative Office, Nawa Model School, the Rhino Supermarket, 3D Medical Services and hospitals. Top among the inspected projects is the Multipurpose Dam and Integrated Water Treatment Plant, as the Commander 43 Engineer, Brigadier General Festus Briggs, detailed the Chief of Army Staff about the projects.
Among the completed projects is this 54 million cubic litre dam, which not only supplies water to the entire barracks, but to its surrounding villages.
The purpose of the visit by the Chief of Army Staff is to assess the level of progress made in the ongoing works, many of them like you have seen. The welfare of Nigerian Army personnel is one of the topmost priorities of the Chief of Army Staff.
The General Officer Commanding 3DIV, Major General Nuhu Angbazu, was commended for a job well done in supervising the projects. From the Maxwell Kobe Cantonment, Rinred Silvanus Lot, NTA News.
Police operatives attached to the Intelligence Response Unit of the Nigeria Police Force have arrested 3 people for the kidnap and gruesome murder of one Mrs. Janet Ninna Ogbonnaya on the 14th of May 2020. The suspects, all of the same parents, are Johnson Emmanuel, Gideon Emmanuel, and Success Emmanuel. In a statement, Force Public Relations Officer DCP Frank Mba said the suspects were arrested by the police in their hometown, Ideato local government area of Imo State, where they had taken refuge after committing the crime in Abuja in order to evade police arrest. Meanwhile, today, the 4th of June 2020, the suspects led a team of investigators alongside pathologists to a residence at Wamba District, Lokogoma, Abuja, where the victim's decomposing body was exhumed from a septic tank. A Toyota Highlander Jeep belonging to the deceased has also been recovered by police operatives at a mechanic's workshop in Apo, where it had been repainted and the vehicle documents changed. Maiduguri is next on the lineup, and Mohammed is there to guide us. Mohammed?
Thank you, Cyril, and welcome to Maiduguri. Plans are underway by Borno State government to resettle displaced communities from 4 local government areas in Borno State this year. The state governor, Professor Babagana Umar Zulum, made this known while inspecting ongoing work on 500 houses in New Marte to resettle IDPs from the area taking refuge in Mongono local government. Mohamed Goni reports.
Communities built to be resettled are New Marte in Marte local government, Ajiri in Mapa, Kauri in Kandiga, and Banki in Bama local government areas. Professor Babagana Umar expressed satisfaction with the quality of work.
We hope to bring them back before end of July, depending upon the security situation.
Before leaving Marte, the governor had a closed-door discussion with the commanding officer and other principal military officers based in New Marte. Meanwhile, Professor Babagana Umar was at Wulgo town in Gala local government area on an assessment visit to see for himself the situation of the ravaged community. The visit, according to the governor, was to pave the way for commencement of clearance work.
As soon as the clearance exercise is being completed, we shall also put some measures to see how we can rehabilitate the homes of the displaced communities with a view to resettling them back.
Once a vibrant agrarian and fishing community, Wulgo town has been reduced to a ghost town, almost becoming a thick forest with shrubs grown all over. The governor on arrival had discussion with the military command on a wide range of security issues, bordering on eventual rebuilding and resettlement of the community. In Marte, the headquarters of Marte local government, Mahmoud Goni, NTA.
That is it from Maiduguri. Is back to Cyril with the rest of Network News.
Thank you, Mohammed. As Nigeria battles to ensure food security in the advent of coronavirus, fishing activities at Woodhill in Kano State are yet to resume fully following the massive destruction of aquatic life of the river, which is the major source of livelihood for the community. The people of the community, who are still in a state of despair, say the incident is not unconnected with untreated toxic waste discharged into the river by some industries in the state. Let's hear the full story.
Woodhill River, located in the southern part of Kano, is about 38 kilometers away from the metropolis, and it traverses many states including Jigawa, Gombe, Yobe, and beyond. The majority of population along the bank of the river depend largely on it for their source of livelihood. However, a couple of weeks ago, the normal life of the people was disrupted following the discharge of industrial waste into the mother nature, killing all the aquatics.
We really don't know what to do next. We want authorities to come to our aid.
Reacting to the incident, Assistant Director, Department of Pollution Control, Kano State Ministry of Environment, said federal government is already on top of the situation.
Most of these waste industries that we have in Chalawa Industrial Estate and Chala, and they used to treat their wastewater before discharge. But sometimes, because of certain circumstances, some of them definitely they are not treating, so they are discharging it untreated. And definitely when they discharge it untreated, when it enters into the body of water, it may cause so many implications.
He, however, assured that the ministry is already investigating the ugly trend, saying any company found guilty of improper disposal of industrial waste shall be prosecuted as done in the past.
Time now for another quick break.
It is with great sadness that the family of Professor Kamalita Ohaire announced her passing to glory on 3rd June 2020 following a prolonged illness, forever remembered by husband, children, mother and siblings. Date of burial to be announced by the family. Signed, Professor Obioma Ohaire, for the family.
Sports now with Ayodeji Maki.